So is this a midwestern comedy?
This is an entirely new genre of movie. This is a midwestern.
And you're the straight shooter.
Exactly. Should we be looking at you or the lens, or
You're looking at the lens. It's sort of working for me.
Okay, I'm looking at you.
Okay, that's all right. All right. So the secret of this kind of comedy is to play it straight, if I'm not mistaken. You got to own it. You got to be really seriously you.
Yeah, I think that it's a movie that's not. There's all kinds of comedies. This is one that is earnest and genuine, and it's sort of a lot of characters that are funny in spite of themselves, and they're good people, and they're in tough situations, and they don't always make good choices. And the humor comes from the context and the passion and the fear, and not from any kind of really ridiculous, broad, over-the-top jokes or ridicule of any kind. It's compassionate.
That's why it works, because there are a lot of people who try to go into this area that end up making fun of the people that they're showing, and that's a disaster. I think people, it's not going to play with the great washed between the coasts if people don't accept the people. Talk about that. The dangers there.
I think the audience can sense right away whether there's affection for the characters or not coming from the whole team. And to me, those are the movies I react to. I want to see a movie that has a lot of affection for no matter how flawed the character is, to have a lot of affection for the character. To me, that's what I go for. And so it was very easy here because Ed and Phil Johnston, who developed the script, had it all on the page. Clearly there was a lot of fun to be had with these characters, but they never wrote that line where they made fun of them ever. And so it was.
Can you talk about how when Alexander Payne came on board as producer?
I was just going to ask you that. Go for it.
And he's from Omaha. I'm from Georgia. Phil, the writer, is from Wisconsin, and so there was always a.
And you're from Puerto Rico.
Yeah, of course, Miguel's from Puerto Rico.
Yes. It makes perfect sense.
But there was always a priority to have compassion for the characters and real affection. But you were talking the other day about some of the things that Alexander actually made a point of changing in the script.
It was great. Alexander was an amazing producer. He watched over our language. He said, all this language is delicious, but don't go over this. Maybe this is going over the top a little bit. Watch it there. And he was also, look at your locations. Think about the Midwest. Don't make a stereotype out of it. Maybe you don't have the characters meet at an Applebee's. Maybe you have them meet at a sushi restaurant, like at
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. What is the world that you created here? Because it's not exactly the reality. Mm-hmm. It's a different world. Can you, if I'm not mistaken, if you could describe where it sits in relation to reality? It's slightly exaggerated.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there's, in any movie, reality is heightened. Because there's an awareness that you're performing, but there was a real concerted effort to use locations that felt authentic, to use wardrobe, costume design that felt authentic, and to make character choices that felt authentic. The story is it deals with a very unusual character. Tim is a rare person, but I don't think he's implausible, and I don't think that he's someone that you would never find.
Well, it's the ultimate fish out of water, child, pure, naive, and you fall in love with him. You do.
Yeah.
And you root for him to have as much sex as possible. And he does.
As much as possible.
And it was very heightened sex, too.
No, your casting, it's like the fantasy comedy cast. I don't mean to gush, but you did pretty well on that level.
It was very important. One aspect of the script that I love is that it's the story of going to a new place, and you think you're going to have a weekend. Tim is scared to go there. He thinks he has to just save his family, and something surprising happens, and he makes friends for life. And we all had that experience. We go on a trip, and what do we know? We suddenly make a friend that will be with us for the rest of our lives. And there's something very beautiful about that. So we needed a cast that could give us that kind of chemistry, and that was really important when we were thinking about it. It was written that way, to be a beautiful motley crew.
Anne Hesh was a surprise for me. She's a real comedian. She's and sexy.
Yeah.
I've been a big fan of Anne for a long time. I saw a movie that I don't know if a lot of people saw called 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Harrison Ford, Ivan Reitman.
Yes, and it was kind of like a classic screwball comedy. And I was looking at her, and she's like a little Carol Lombard. She's like gorgeous and funny, and really has an edge to her that is very, very funny.
Yeah, and she's sassy in this movie, which is what I love, and I think even from the very beginning, making her a redhead, these choices that kind of just gave her like some spunk that was fun.
But the other thing that movies are often about is this kind of throw anarchy into a situation, make it chaotic and crazy, and then tie up all the loose ends at the end. And you kind of follow that a bit. You want to address the appeal of anarchy in movies, the idea that an uptight character gets to run free?
Mm-hmm. Well, nobody... A story is not interesting unless the characters are challenged. And you take a character like Tim Lippy, who is lived his entire life so protected in such a shell, sometimes by external forces, but often by his own sort of introversion and self-preservation mechanisms. It takes so little to disturb that. And that's what's so fun about this story, is that the things that happen in this movie are rather mundane by most standards, especially by big comedy movie standards. But for this particular guy, it is earth-shattering. And
almost like a kid going to college for the first time, or visiting. I mean, the idea that he's getting on a plane for the first time.
You just said it. A kid.
Exactly.
That's what Tim is. He's a 36-year-old child with nothing but wide-eyed wonder for the world. And I don't know. I feel like it's such a tiny story, but we put such a microscope on it that suddenly it's so vibrant and has so much texture and excitement. And this mundane world has all the pathos of an epic Greek tragedy.
Now, did the final result come close to what you imagined when you were developing the script?
For me, I wanted to be damn funny, and I found it really, really funny. I thought the chemistry between Ed and the rest of the cast was hilarious. But what I'm most proud of is that I also feel like it has a lot of warmth. They really audiences seem to love the four
you
of
root
you
for
together.
them, yeah. And against the enemy, Kurtwood Smith, of course.
Right, of course. What a great enemy Kurtwood Smith is.
The naked scene is a high point.
Of course.
You can't go wrong. That's so easy.
We wanted to get a female audience in there, so we thought, how better than to put a naked Kurtwood Smith hugging a naked Ed Helms.